Hello, welcome to the Crochet Cakes YouTube channel. I am Clarissa and once again joined by Caroline of Mine and Muse Crafts, also known as my mom. And for this year, for this video, we thought we would give you a yarn review of a recent release, the Redheart Granny Square yarn. Hello, how are you doing? It's the end of the year.
December 31st, 2023.
No, it's December 30th.
Oops.
Because you leave on the 31st. Oops. So it's December 30th, 2023, and Mom's excited that it's the end of the year, and I'm just, I don't know, the end of the year always makes me sad. I think it's because instead of looking forward to a new year, I'm just like, well, people are all the same. They're not going to change.
You're stuck. You're in stuck mode.
Yeah. But I don't know, it's just conflicting because I always feel that there's so many things that you just have to carry on to the new year.
Well, because there are a lot of things that we start, that's true, but then there's no hope.
Maybe not. But that is why we brought you a yarn review of a fun yarn that's been recently released.
That we found over the Christmas season.
Yeah, we did. I think Yarnspirations released it during December.
Well, I saw it in December.
Yeah, I went to their website, it said sold out, but I don't know if it's because they hadn't yet made it available or if it was sold out. But we went to Joann's.
And it was there. Then there was lots of it.
Yeah, like 2 days ago?
And a lot of pretty colors.
So as we were saying, we went to Joann's and they had a lot of it. I actually ordered because I had one of those online coupons where you order online, pick up in store, you get extra 20% off. But they hadn't unpacked all of it, so they only had the color that Mom picked out, which is, I'm putting it on the screen for you guys, it is Dove? Something about Dove?
I don't remember the name of it, I never would. But yeah, mixture of whites and creams and blacks and grays, basically. That's what it is. What I've been crocheting in at this end of the year for a while now.
It's true. I mean, I think it's almost the exact colors of the hexagon cardi that you crocheted.
Very similar. I didn't have the creamish, white, off-white, whatever. But yeah, very similar.
Well, I picked a color that I didn't think I would. But I think...
Out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, it's a color out of my comfort zone, and it is called Soft White Hot Stuff. I mean, I don't know who named it, but it's got creams, the soft white from Redheart, and then it's got like a bright highlighter.
This is like a pinkish.
Yeah,
a very light
right?
pink.
And then it's got like a pinkish red. And then it's got...
Phosphorescent? Does it look a little?
Yeah, a little bit. And then it's got the
brick red.
And what do you call that? Like lilac? Like a denim? Lavender? It's like a lavender
There's
color.
a name for that purple that's a little bit blue.
And then
dark.
Definitely burgundy or wine.
Burgundy or wine color.
So that is the combination. And I'm going to show you a picture of Mom's colors right on the screen as well, so you can appreciate.
You don't want to show them how yours looks?
Oh.
How your yarn looks in the...
Oh, I did
skein?
There's a video going over our faces. Okay. That just shows...
sometimes it's just good to see how something looks in the skein and how it works up in the yarn. But this yarn is designed with a special purpose.
Yeah, it's called Redheart Granny Square because it's literally designed so that you can crochet a granny square and not have to change colors.
It does the color changes for you, which means that for each granny square you only have 2 ends to weave in.
Yep.
The beginning and at the end, and
we can talk a little bit about the different methods because we did experiment with different ways of starting a granny square just to see if it would work, because we all know that there's about, I don't know, 20 ways of actually crocheting a granny square. It depends.
Yeah, there's several.
So I went with the magic loop method at the beginning.
So did I.
You did as well?
Yes, but in the inside pattern that they have, they do the chain 3, I think.
That's what I thought they would do, a chain 3, because we found out that when you're doing the magic loop or magic ring method, you actually have to leave a very long tail in order for you to be able to use up all this middle color. So this is, I would say, about a 4-inch tail specifically.
Well, she found out. I am just clicking with that idea because what I did was I left my normal 4-inch tail and then used a bigger hook.
Oh, no, it is also...
Now that you say that, I really didn't have to do that.
It's also true. It's also true because one of the things that we wanted to talk about this yarn was, of course, does it work up, the hook sizes and all that.
Basically a review, an honest review of whether it does the job it was designed to do.
And spoiler alert, it does. I mean, you get a granny square without having to
change colors.
Cut colors.
Yourself, yeah. You don't even have to pick the colors yourself because they already come in the ball.
So this is one of the color combos. The thing about it is that you have to play around with your hook sizes in order to get tension. So I think...
And your tension.
Yeah, I think these granny squares are a great test for tension and appreciating the importance of having the gauge a pattern was specified for so that you get exactly what you need.
So now that you say that, when I was using it, I think it was last night or something like that, I also thought that. I said, you know, for a beginner, somebody that has down their basic chain method and their stitches, it would be a good job to work with this to make granny squares because they really have to learn how to tighten their tension or to loosen their tension, because the pattern that's on inside the skein does not recommend changing hook sizes like we did. They say if you have leftover yarn, then go back,
loosen your tension,
an edge, and
loosen your tension.
Leftovers is too much, so you have to tighten.
No, you have to loosen your tension.
Loosen your tension so that until it works. And if you don't have enough yarn left over, then you tighten your tension. But then you have to end right where the other color starts.
Yeah,
but that's like it depends on how you're making the granny square also.
It really does because, for example, I start my granny squares in a half corner. So I either do a double crochet and then I chain 2 and do the corner, or I do the half corner, and then when I come around to close the round, instead of doing chain 2 slip stitch, I actually single crochet into that first double crochet, and it leaves you at the perfect spot to begin the corner in the space.
I have never heard of that. It's the first time I've heard of that method. What I usually just do is I make the whole corner and I come around and I slip stitch to the first stitch in the corner.
And then she slip stitches
and then I slip stitch to the next hole, the next space, and then I continue. So it all depends, you know, how much yarn you want left over depending on how far you have to go when you reach the end.
So these are like, I guess, 3 different methods that we tried and tested to crochet the granny square.
But the methods work. It's not that. It's just the idea of you always have to play with your tension.
Yeah, you do.
To make it work. Because, right?
Because they tell you that the granny square should be 6 by 6. That is what it's designed for, to be a 6 by 6 granny square. And that's a total of
6
5
inches. 6 inches.
Yes, I should have specified, sorry. And you should have a total of 5 rounds. So how much yarn you have left over at the end, I think you can play a little bit around with that. It's not a super, it's not like written in stone how much of a tail you have to leave. Like you can see in some of my squares, I had more tail, some of them I had, more tail, less tail. So it all depends. You can play around with the end, but for the middle, you really, really need to match that tension. So what we found out, or I guess what I learned from Mom, because she did plan pooling, is that you have to play around with your hook sizes. So,
well, it's an alternative. An alternative to adjusting your tension is to using a different hook size for a certain round, because we found that some colors have more yarn for the round, right, than we actually needed for the beginning. The recommended is 5.5.
The recommends a 5.5 millimeter hook. And I would also say that not just should you play around with your hook sizes, but the brand of hooks you are using. Because I was using a 5mm crochet hook from Furls, and I have a much looser tension, so I was running out of my yarn faster. And then I switched to a 5mm hook from the Dots We Crochet hook for the Dots We Crochet hook, and I actually had...
But wouldn't a looser tension mean you had leftover?
No, looser tension means I don't have enough yarn. Tighter tension means you have leftover.
I understand.
So I switched my hook brand, and I found that my tension was pretty even across the board, but I still had to use a 5.5mm hook to crochet my middle. There's no way around that. I do have to use a 5.5.
One of the other things that I played with, and I don't know if Clarissa did, was that on some rounds I did my cluster and then left one stitch in between the clusters.
Oh, I did.
And I always left 2 stitches on the corners. And then there are some rounds where I didn't leave any stitches in between the clusters in order to get to the end. So I don't think I read with enough care, enough attention to the instructions that are on the inside to see exactly how they recommend doing that granny square. But I think I read at one point that they were leaving a space in between the clusters.
I don't.
So I couldn't do that on every round because I wouldn't have enough or I'd have too much left over, and so I played with that also.
No, I didn't. I don't leave spaces between my granny stitches. And in the corners, I did do chain 2 between, granny cluster, chain 2,
Because I know a lot of
cluster.
people like to leave that, at least that one stitch, because the side sort of like tends to pull
It does.
when you don't. And in terms of stitches, your stitches kind of like get hidden when you work into the space because you're not really working over a stitch. You're working in the 2 corners of the stitches. So if you're doing something else, like attaching to that edge, you might lose a stitch because you're not seeing it's because the stitch is hidden in the join, is what I mean. So there are a lot of ways to make granny squares or granny hexagons. And this is a hexagon granny cardigan that I'm wearing, another one that I created. You can still see the hexagon there. And when I was looking that up, people did all kinds of things with their hexagons.
And this one's different from the one that you showed because this one's a solid hexagon.
This one is a solid hexagon, yep.
I'll do a video because that
as opposed to the open stitch. And I believe from my experience that the solid hexagon has a different mechanism for creating the hexagon that you're working with than the granny stitch ones. So
well, that makes sense because you're using more stitches, but yeah, I think that's something that I do want to. It'd be fun. I don't think you can use the granny square yarn to make a hexagon though. Maybe. I don't think you'd have enough yarn.
You have more sides, but I don't know. You'd have to try because I don't know how they grow in terms of. I think they use more yarn, but.
So yeah, but those were the sizes that I used. I used a 5mm and a 5.5 to start my granny square, but Mom used different hook sizes, and we still got the same
6 inches. So I used a 6mm for the beginning one and 5.5 on many rounds. But there was still another round that I had to use the 6mm hook because I was always getting extra. And there were some yarns where I had to go all the way around almost to the end with a 5.5 and then go up to a 6 to use up yarn, or start with a 6 and go down to a 5.5 so I would have enough yarn. So I still played around with it a lot. I don't know, maybe that's just my ignorance in terms of my attention, but
no, I
there were rows that worked out fine, rounds, and then there were some that just didn't make it. And especially between different granny squares.
Oh, yeah.
Like on one granny square, it would work fine, and then the next one, it didn't work so fine. So I thought it was maybe my tension is changing because I'm getting more familiar with the pattern, but maybe it wasn't.
I think it also had to do with, and this is also an important lesson if you've never worried about your tension does change with the mood you are in. Like the sleepier I got, the looser my tension would be.
The time of night that you're working on this.
And if I'm falling asleep, sometimes I would tighten it just to make sure I was awake. So that also played a role. The other thing was the color combos. I thought they were pretty good. The color combos. The only
consistency.
thing, yeah, the consistency. But the only thing with mine was that as I'm getting more towards the middle, the colors are getting lighter. Like it's as if they were faded.
An ombre?
An ombre effect of fading right there. But Mom's were pretty even across the board. And I think you have some fun color combos that you can choose from the range of Redheart granny squares.
They have a suggestion for making a vest
Yeah.
as the pattern that's included. And if you don't like that, because the granny squares, like we said, are 6 inches by 6 inches.
So you get a total of 14
You're going to get
ball.
a big garment, 14 per ball. So you're going to get a big garment. They say that for the vest that's on the front,
You need
this one
2
over
balls.
here, you need, depending the size, between 2 and 3.
2 of this color and then a contrasting to join.
And then a contrasting, right. And so we figure, well, you could make, can I borrow this? You could make a smaller granny square if you wanted to. So what we would suggest you doing is at the point where you finish, let's say your 3rd round, then you cut your 4 inches and just detach the next 2 colors and ball them up either together or separately. I would do it separately.
Or you could
Ball
use
them
them
up
like
and-
to play with the color combos instead of having all the colors in one granny square.
Well, they could be used as your
joining.
contrasting yarn in the end. So you could just do either, if you don't like, because I'm all about not hiding ends, so I tie my ends together. I do that magic knot that never comes apart.
That's enough.
So you could roll each of these colors into little balls and tie the same colors together and make larger balls and use that as your contrasting yarn at the end.
So there's ways you can play around with this just one ball of granny square
Well, you might
yarns.
think that is defying the purpose.
It is a little bit, but
It was just like when the mandala, and there were other yarns that were coming in cakes and
But-
colors, people would separate them to use
for
them.
example, this is my ideal granny square size. So 1, 2, 3 rounds for me is my ideal granny square size. So I actually find that the 5 rounds of granny square are a bit too big, especially if you want to crochet a garment. So you can compare there. I find it a little bit too big. I still
Even
like
if you were going to make one with this, like they suggest, you could probably combine with the smaller one
Yeah,
to get
so-
some fitting or whatever.
Yeah, for example, I would
shoulder.
like use the shoulder. I would use a smaller granny square for the shoulder. But I am planning, I don't know if Mom's planning on doing this too, I think it would be fun, but I am planning on doing a little video for the beginning of the new year, 2024, on how joining this to make a vest, because I'm not going to use granny squares for the whole garment. I mean, it does make 14, so I think I would have enough, but I just don't want to. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is, does the idea work? Yes, but like we said, you need to play around.
You need to prep yourself, you know, you can't
mentally.
You have to play with it so that, because everybody likes to get on a rhythm, and you won't get into the rhythm until you know exactly what tension you need and what hook size you need to make everything work. But once you get into the rhythm, I took notes and I wrote down for this round, and it was pretty consistent. Always use this hook size and keep your tension tight or keep your tension loose. Or, I put my notes down because you think you're going to remember, but I didn't, so I could always refer to them.
No.
And it worked out fine. I've almost, what have I finished?
10.
I have finished 10 of the granny squares, and that was like yesterday?
Yeah, mostly because the day we started, you did 3 granny squares.
Oh, did
I
do
did
3?
2. And yesterday we were driving my sister to the airport, so
And I
Mom
worked on
did
granny
all the other
squares.
ones. So it's a pretty quick make in that sense. Now I have to ask, and this might be like a hot take, but would you rather use that granny yarn, or would you rather use your own yarn and change colors every round?
Well, I would rather use this yarn because I do not like weaving in ends. But the people that like weaving in ends are going to find that this yarn is not very useful to them. I think that they do a pretty good job at choosing colors,
They did.
which is something that I have never felt that I'm good at. So I like their
Same.
suggestions of colors. I would be willing to play with some more of the colors of the yarn. It's not like a very cheap yarn. It is, what was it? It's $9.99.
$10.
Normally.
But I find that it's kind of worth it in the sense that that technique must be very time consuming to create. And also the yarn does not feel like your typical Redheart Super Saver yarn. It's softer. It's got a very nice feel to it.
And not, well, my hook wasn't splitting my yarn, which happens a lot with Redheart yarn. It's can tend to be, the normal acrylic can tend to be splitty.
And plasticky feeling, and this one doesn't feel that way. But yeah.
So it all depends how you feel. How, like I said, I think a beginner, it would be good. Because, you know, but if you feel very comfortable weaving in your ends and also choosing how to coordinate your colors, then go for it. If you just want a day off from thinking and from, you know, having all of the things, extra things to do at the end, you still have to weave in two at the end.
Well,
so right now
plus your joins.
I have 10 granny squares, so that's 20 ends that I have to weave in.
But it's better than it's 5 colors, so that would be 50. Plus whatever yarn you choose to connect with.
So yeah, I see, for me, it's a definite plus. It could get costly depending on what you're making, but we got it on sale, so just wait for some sales. I don't know how long it's going to be around because, you know, these things are a fad. If people take to them, it's like the plan pooling. You can still find some of those yarns around, but not a lot of them.
That's true.
You don't see new ones come up.
That's true. I think they came out with this range right now because granny squares are a big thing. Like they're coming back, different ways of doing, different projects. I've yet to try if it works with any other type of granny square. I want to try a solid, but sorry, I got ahead of myself.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't. And she wants to try it out, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't because a solid has a lot more stitches.
It does. It does. But I still want to give it a little bit of a go. Now, would I rather buy this ball of yarn, which does bring a pretty decent amount of yarn because it's 14 squares that you get, and
6 by 6.
Yeah, but it's what's the weight? It is 417 yards, 250 grams. So it's a pretty big skein of yarn. 250 grams.
Well, if you think that there are 5 colors in there.
Yeah, I think it's decent. I like the yarn. I hate weaving in ends as well, but I think because of the size of granny square that you get, I would rather weave in my ends.
If you're still putting things on a wish list for 3 Kings Day like we do, or for Valentine's Day, or for your birthday, or for whatever, then I would still put it there because I think it's fun to try it out.
It is a fun. I think it's also a good stocking stuffer gift if you know a crocheter. I mean, it is fun. I think that just because I'm more interested in making garments and such, I would rather just weave in ends because I want...
That is something you will never hear me say.
No. And in fact, I don't know why I said that because we all know that even though I still wear my granny square dress... She says that because
she never does, she never weaves in the end, so that's why it doesn't bother her. But one thing that I will say is that one experiment that comes to mind that I want to do for the new year, and it was inspired by this yarn, is I want to see if it's possible for me to reach the end of a round and know exactly at what point I need to tie the next color in so that I can end with the old color and immediately start with the new one.
I think how I would do that if you're
with a magic knot.
If you're using magic knots in your own stash, I would sacrifice a strand of the yarn so when the white ends, cut it off, and then you can have that strand and you can...
Yeah, but you have to know where to cut it off because your knot is going to take up some yarn. And then you want to crochet until the exact point where you put your hook in and pick up the new color. Is it possible to measure that with a specific tension, obviously, and hook size?
I think so, but
so
you'd have to...
I can actually create my own ball of this yarn?
You'd have to work up the granny square. That's what I think you'd need to do. work up the granny square, leaving in tails on either side, and then ripping that back, and each color
You
would
could
be...
play with it. You have to complete the round, tie it somewhere up, so that didn't work out. So you're going to lose that yarn.
I do think, like we're talking about creating your own granny square skeins and things like that, you get more versatility out of the granny square if you use different weight of yarns for different projects. For example, if you want a lighter weight garment, then using granny squares and fingering weight yarn, that would work better. This is worsted weight yarn, as Redheart tends to do, but I still think you can get some projects out of it. So the pattern label comes with a vest idea. I am going to do a vest, just not the exact one on the pattern label. I also think you could, of course, go for the granny square blanket or a granny square cushion. You could get like 2 cushions out of this, depending on the size of cushion. What ideas come to mind?
Well, if you do the front in granny squares and the back in a coordinating yarn, you could probably get 2 with some left over, maybe.
I was telling Mom...
I think they would take 6 for the front, and you could obviously do 6 on the back also, and just have 1 left over, only get 1 cushion. Or you could do 6 on each front. Or you can use 6 for the front, and then use a coordinating color for the back, middle, and then you get 2 cushions, and you'll have 1 granny square left over. Put a pocket.
Exactly. And you could, of course, go for a cardigan. Just get 3 balls. I would say 3 balls of yarn, maybe 2 of contrasting colors so you can join, because sleeves take up a lot of yarn. I think you could also go for a bag. Definitely line your bag though. I was telling Mom that if I use this yarn to make a blanket, I think I would still like to line it and treat the crochet as like a quilt. So sew it all, but then put a lining that faces the crochet, and then...
Don't you normally have to? Because granny squares are pretty open.
They are. People usually don't line blankets, but bags definitely. I think it would be great to do the crossover body bag fashion that's going on. I think you could definitely do that with the granny squares. I mean, they're just fun. It's quick to just pick up the yarn and know exactly what project you need to make with it, because you have to make a granny square.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely liked the experience, and I would use it, but like I say, I would wait for it to be on sale.
So I think bottom line for us is we had fun playing around with the granny square, and we're definitely going to make something with the 14 squares that we can out of the 1 ball. And it is a yarn that I would recommend, especially for a beginner, just to teach them about tension and the importance of tension and all the different ways.
And being consistent with the tension. You know, yeah, I think there's a lot you can learn as a beginner from that, using that yarn. And it rips back.
Very
it doesn't,
easily.
It frogs back, and it doesn't ruin, doesn't get ruined easily. I mean, you know how many times we had to frog back for the first granny square we made?
Yeah. That
because it was for each color.
Yeah, it was for each color. I think
it was very rare to get it on the first try.
It was, and it's definitely, I have, like I said, the middle color is fine, the end color is fine. It's all those colors in between, getting that good tension so that when you slip stitch, you end just with the old color to begin your new color. But as a final reminder and wrap up of this Granny Square, Redheart Granny Square yarn review, we liked it. We had fun. Our opinions differ on whether or not we might prefer this to making our own granny squares, but ultimately I would still recommend it. As we said, as a beginner, you learn a lot about tension and the importance of it, and as an experienced crocheter, I think it's just fun to pick something up that you know what you're gonna make with at that point, and that you have all the tools available. And I don't know, it's still creative, I think, and it's fun.
And I want to really see what I come up with.
Yeah, I also want to see what you come up with. As a spoiler, I'm going to be creating a vest, I think I mentioned. So the first video of the new year will hopefully be, no, that's, sorry. A second video of the new year will hopefully be me showing you how I put together the vest and what designs I included to kind of just play around with it. And
it'll be nice because those are colors that look a little bit like the next celebration that comes up,
Which is Valentine's.
That Glacier doesn't really like to celebrate a lot, but just because it's there, and I thought that one looked a lot like Valentine's Day, so that'll be fun.
I think it will, and I can't wait to see what you create. I know that you'll, you may not.
I may slow down.
Yeah, but it'll still be fun just to chat with you.
So we'll see how long I have before I slow down, and if I already finished basically the front.
That's true. You have 10
I have
squares.
one shoulder. I just need the other one, which would be, this is 9, 10, 11. And depending on whether the back, I want to make it with the same granny squares or do what you're doing and choose. I thought a cream color would go nice to kind of like lighten it up a bit so it doesn't look so dark.
I mean, you are on your Wednesday Addams face.
I am. And especially towards the end of this year, I worked a lot with those colors and learned to love them and bought a lot of those colors for my wardrobes and all that. And so, yeah, it's good. I chose, I was inclined towards that colorway because of, I have been working so much with that, with that combination of colors. So, yeah, if you're looking for a fun project to either end the year
or
to start the year with something simple in, comfort zone that, mostly everybody can make a granny square. And if you hate granny squares, well, that yarn is definitely not for you.
But thank you so much for joining us today as we say goodbye to 2023 and welcome in 2024, where we hope to, continue crafting and sharing as much of that craft as we can with you. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of crafty time with Mom and I. We managed to literally squeeze in one last video before the end of the year. And just thank you. Thank you so much.
Happy 2024.
Bye. Oh, and if you want to see the outfits, I'm going to include a video of Mom's outfit and a video of this outfit. Okay, bye.